The word security has many meanings. In finance law, it has at least two. There's the kind of security that is a form of assurance that a loan will be repaid, or at least an asset that can be sold if a loan is not repaid. That is the kind of security we refer to when we think about secured lending. We discussed secured lending in week 6. Another kind of security is a tradable financial instrument that represents some legal right to be paid money in the future. This is the kind of security we will consider this week. There are 3 broad categories of securities: equity securities, which refer to shares in a company; debt securities, which typically represent a right to receive back the principal lent as well as interest. Debt securities include debentures, bonds, banknotes, and commercial paper, amongst others. And finally, there are derivatives, which is a broad term given to a variety of financial instruments whose value depends upon some other financial entity or mechanism. Broadly, there are 2 ways in which securities can be sold. They can be sold directly between 2 parties in a private transaction, such that there is no supervision and the price of the sale may not be known by the public. This is called an over-the-counter or OTC transaction. Alternatively, securities may be made available for sale in central public marketplaces called exchanges, which were traditionally physical places where people met, but are now predominantly electronic. This week we will focus particularly on the 2 forms of security, shares and debentures, both of which are issued by companies to finance their operations. The legal basis for a share is a surprisingly complex topic. Ironically, share is not even defined in the Corporations Act. The Act only implies that a company limited by shares must have shares to begin with, and the Act then gives the company to issue the right to issue further shares or cancel shares. A share is fundamentally a kind of contract between the shareholder and the company. It is also a right to part of the capital of the company and all the associated liabilities and benefits, including dividends. Since it is fundamentally a contract, then a share is also personal property, since a right to sue pursuant to a contract is a shows in action, which is a kind of personal property. The terms of that contract are made up of the terms on which the share is first issued by the company, sections of the Corporations Act that govern shares, and also the company's constitution. Shares are regulated by different parts of the Corporations Act, but particularly Chapter 2H, which you can see on your screen. An alternative to simply borrowing money from a bank or issuing shares is to issue debentures. Rather than receive a share of the profit of a company, the company must repay the debenture holder a fixed amount of interest. Thus, the likelihood of repayment is greater, but the return is also lower. Debenture is defined to mean shows in action that includes an undertaking by the body, usually the company, to repay as a debt money deposited with or lent to the body. The shows in action may, but need not, include a security interest over property of the body to secure repayment of the money. In certain circumstances, a company is required to enter a trust deed and appoint an approved trustee who has a broad duty and power to enforce the company's obligation to repay debenture holders. And they're the main focuses that we'll look at in week 3.